I'm Kelly Siegler, and I was a prosecutor for over 21 years. I'd been involved in more than 200 trials, around 60 murder cases, and 20 death penalty cases. Hello, Rhonda.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Good, how are you? The prosecutor is the voice for the victim and for their loved ones in that courtroom. My job is to seek justice. And when you meet the victim's family, it's really easy to know who you're getting justice for.
What did that feel like, watching him take his last breath, dying before your eyes?
We were taught at our office that your courtroom is your living room. And anytime we can reenact and show exactly what we think happened to the victim, we do that.
She turned that bedroom into a torture chamber, that bed into a butcher block.
In 2004, I tried the case of the murder of Jeffrey Wright. During the trial, I brought the brutalness of the crime into the courtroom, where all of these injuries in the chest area consistent with the knife being held in this direction. To get my point across, I used a tactic that was at the time controversial. It garnered a lot of press and even more criticism. This case changed the course of my career in ways I've never talked about. When my daughter started working as a prosecutor, defense lawyers told her her first day at work, you know, your mom was wrong what she did in that courtroom. I don't care. I'm glad I did it. I know why I did it. I'm proud I did it, and it was the right thing to do. So here's the bed pieces. Where's the mattress?
They burned it because it was...
It was bad.
It was, yeah, that biohazard.
Where's everything else?
Right around the corner.
Oh, come show me. Today I'm at the Harris County Evidence Archives, which is only open to lawyers. The shovel. I didn't remember if we recovered the shovel or not. I haven't seen this stuff in over 20 years, and looking through all this makes me feel like I'm right back in that courtroom all over again. So this knife is different than a typical knife in a murder case because the piece is missing. State's Exhibit 65, and that's the piece that's found embedded in Jeffrey's skull. I wanted the jury to have a true picture of the injuries. Look how few are on his back. So that's how you know he was tied down the whole time. This tells the whole story of the torture. The night that this case began started like any other night, but it quickly changed into a case that none of us involved would ever forget.
On a Saturday evening, a defense attorney came into the district attorney's office during non-public hours and said they could find a dead body in the backyard of the house at this address.
It's really unusual for a defense lawyer to report a crime. He doesn't identify who the person is. But we all figured out pretty quickly that the reason Neil Davis was the reportee was probably because he was representing somebody that had something to do with why that body was in the backyard.
The people that lived at 10822 Berry Tree Drive were Jeff and Susan Wright and their 2 children. This is a middle-class neighborhood. It's midnight. We're using flashlights to try to light that area up and see.
When they looked inside the patio portion, they saw the head and shoulder of what they believed to be a male subject.
You see an arm, part of a hand, and you see it could be a head. The rest of it's buried. In Texas, the body actually belongs to the medical examiner, and we don't touch it until they get there.
I'm looking at this body. There was a ligature, a cloth tied around both of the wrists, and then there was one around one of the ankles. And I could see there was a massive amount of stab wounds to the front side of his body. I was surprised at how much violence had gone on there. As we were looking at the scene and taking everything in, we noticed a hunting knife. It was near the body in a flower pot. There was a good chance that that was involved in our murder. There were no witnesses at the scene, just constables, officers, and a defense attorney.
I spoke with him briefly. He can't tell me much because attorney-client privilege. I can not remember that ever happening on another scene.
I got a call from Sheriff's Department Homicide, who I worked with a lot, saying, Kelly, we need you to come out to a scene because we have a defense lawyer out here and we need you to run interference while we process the scene and figure out what the heck is going on. Going to a scene in person is something that you never forget. I've never been asked to do that before. I've never been asked to do that since. I mean, I'm used to seeing really, really bad pictures, but I'm not used to seeing it up front and personal, no. When you're a girl prosecutor, mostly working with guys, I remember always thinking, be cool, be strong, be in control, and act like you know what you're doing, even when you don't. There were all these things in the backyard that should have been inside the house. A mattress that was bloody, the sideboards, the headboard, the footboard. It was just chaos.
When they shine a flashlight on the mattresses, we can see dark stains. You think it's blood, but you really can't tell at night. It was saturated.
It hit me right then and there. Somebody needs to show a jury how this bed was used in the commission of this murder. And I asked the crime scene guy to take the bed and store it in the property room.
When you get past the patio, you go into the master bedroom. It's a chaotic scene. Something happened here. This is probably where the murder occurred. The bed is missing. Obviously, the mattress and the box springs belong to that bed.
It looks like a tornado has come through this room. There's all kinds of articles over the floor. There's blood staining.
Blood spatter in various places on the walls. It was on nightstands.
When a stabbing occurs, the first stab, you don't pull blood out when you pull back. It's the second one that goes in, you're pulling blood out, and it'll throw some cast out.
There was some pieces of carpet that had been cut out and taken outside and thrown out there. There was a paint can and a paint roller off to the side on the floor. This appeared to us that somebody was hastily trying to clean up this crime scene.
There's signs of bleaching. People always want to use bleach when they're trying to clean up a crime scene to get rid of the blood.
It looked like a cover-up gone wrong.
When we pull him out of the ground, we think this is Jeffrey Wright.
We didn't know where Susan Wright was. We didn't know where Jeffrey's children were. Did somebody abduct them and kill Jeffrey? There were a lot of unanswered questions.
The media first hears about this murder the next day. Things like this did not happen in this part of Houston, and they did not happen with families like the Wrights. So this instantly had the focus of media from not only Houston and Texas, but around the nation.
I was at work sitting at my desk and the phone rang, and it was our sales rep. And he told me what happened to Jeff. I was just in shock. I just couldn't believe it. He was my friend.
Jeff and Susan Wright, by all accounts, were a happy couple. They were young, beautiful. They had 2 little kids. I mean, they seemed to be living the American dream.
Oh, whiplash. He was a good father, a good family man. Was just a good person. Jeff didn't deserve being stabbed.
I start searching out Susan Wright and her family members. And we don't know what role any of them have or what information any of them may have. So several of my partners are out looking for them. They find the home of Susan's parents, they find the home of her sister, but nobody responds to the investigators.
What's going on here? Why won't you let us talk to her? Later, we found out she checked herself into a psychiatric facility.
193 stab wounds.
I've seen all kinds of trials in this town, and this was going to be the trial of the century.
Like you're mad, like you're afraid, like you can't stop.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to ask the prosecutor to get back down in the seat.
Jeffrey Wright is brutally, horribly murdered. Where is his wife? Why is she hiding? We didn't know what was going on in the beginning.
Defense attorney Neil Davis informed the Harris County Sheriff's Office that Susan Wright was receiving psychiatric care in a hospital. I believe the children were with Susan's parents at that time.
Why is she in a psych ward? Who put her there? How'd they get her in there? All those questions I didn't have the answers to, and it didn't make any sense.
Susan has not given a statement to the police, and once Neil Davis identified himself as her lawyer, all communications that law enforcement would attempt with her have to go through him by law.
According to the fingerprints taken by the medical examiner's office, the deceased was in fact identified as Jeff Wright. When he's laying on a table, you could see him, and you got this massive amount of stab wounds on his chest, on his abdomen, legs, and groin. 193 stab wounds. The medical examiner was able to locate a piece of metal in the top of his head, which was consistent to the tip of a knife found in a flower pot. They also found some red wax on his legs and on his buttocks.
Whoever committed this murder didn't just kill Jeffrey. There was this nick, not a stab, to his penis and to his eyeball. And those, to me, were the signs of torture. We got into the investigation, and it turns out that 3 days before Jeff's body is discovered, Susan reports Jeff to the police for abusing her and Bradley.
Susan claimed that her and Jeff had had a fight. He had struck their son. She claimed that he had assaulted her and then threw a MasterCard at her for $100 and then walked away from his truck and wasn't coming back, which would explain why his truck was still there.
The Jeff that I knew, he would never abuse his children. He loved them so much.
Finally, we were able to talk to Susan Wright's sister and to Susan Wright's parents and to get confirmation that their children were okay. But we were never able to speak to Susan. The only person doing all the talking on behalf of Susan Wright was Neil Davis, her lawyer.
She has been in psychiatric care. She has been beaten for 4 years, verbally abused. Her son was struck at least twice by the deceased.
Neil Davis's argument to the media is that she's a battered wife, she's abused, and that she had to resort to this level to defend herself and her children from the imminent threat that Jeffrey Wright was.
Got nothing to hide. We're just interested in fairness and justice.
I wasn't terribly surprised that they had to admit she killed Jeffrey, because who in the heck else would have done it? I was more surprised with the way they presented the abuse and why she felt the need to kill Jeffrey.
If you're a battered spouse, your state of mind, based upon continuing chronic systemic abuse, is not going to be the same as any one of us in this room when we're confronted with imminent danger. You may have a different picture of what type of danger is imminent and whether or not your response to use force or deadly force is reasonable.
Well, you have to remember that I grew up in an abusive house. And I lived with the mom that let a man abuse her for way too long. So I was never going to just discount a woman saying she was abused and blow it off. That was not going to happen. But I also wanted the proof.
I took statements from friends and family, and we learned that Susan's family did not like Jeff. They didn't want her marrying him to begin with because he had a possession of marijuana. He had been arrested for theft and a bad check. Her parents had begged her to leave him and take the kids, but no one saw any injuries. There were no written reports or documented incidents for domestic violence.
She also threw in the allegation that Jeffrey used cocaine, and when he did, that would make him more prone to lose his temper and become abusive to her and the kids.
Jeff had cocaine in his system at the time he died. But on all of the interviews that were done with people that knew Jeff was that he was a hard worker, a personable guy, a good provider. He placed his family as a high priority in his life.
In Texas, if you intentionally take somebody's life, that's a murder case. If she was abused, in this situation, this night when the stabbing happened, maybe she could claim self-defense at trial, which would make her not guilty, but she's still going to be looking at murder charges being filed against her.
In this case, the evidence available was a very bloody, brutal crime scene. You were looking at a body that had been stabbed 193 times and buried, disposed of, and hidden. If you're a prosecutor who's been around for longer than 5 minutes, these things are not going to scream out self-defense to you.
You're probably wondering, well, then how did she get those bruises on her hands and fingers when she made her domestic violence report a few days before Jeffrey's body was even found? I think that Susan might have gotten a couple of the bruises from murdering Jeffrey. She might have gotten some of the scratches from the knife she was holding, but I bet she got most of those bruises from taking apart a four-poster bed and dragging a 220-pound body across her bedroom, across her patio, and putting him in that hole. She probably got pretty dinged up doing all that. We know from the medical examiner, Jeffrey was killed on the 13th. I think that after she committed her murder, Susan somehow thought she could make it all go away, tell people that Jeffrey ran off. It looked like a cover-up gone wrong or a big old change in plans because it just got overwhelming. And so the police report that Susan made at the constable's office was on the 15th. Then she hired a lawyer, and then she checked herself into a psychiatric facility to hide out from the police. Susan Wright had supportive parents. Susan Wright had a wonderful sister. Susan Wright is a beautiful, healthy American woman. She could have gotten out. It might have been rough. Jeffrey didn't want a divorce, but that's not an excuse to commit murder.
When charges are finally filed against Susan, Neil Davis does what any good defense attorney would do at that time, which is orchestrate her surrender.
As we are getting ready to go to trial, Susan Wright is out on bond, which is not unexpected. She's just living her life, waiting until time to go to trial. To me, the evidence in this case was pretty clear. Susan Wright murdered Jeffrey. And I need to show a jury how cold-bloodedly and diabolically she tied him up and got on top of him before she started stabbing him. It feels so funny to look at all this stuff because it was such a part of my life 20 years ago, and all of these things are such an important part of the story. In preparing to go to trial, I would have been pretty stupid to not appreciate all of the things that Susan had going for her as a sympathetic defendant.
How could a woman who looks like she could be the prototypical West Houston soccer mom find herself charged with murder, a crime that carries a possible punishment of 99 years or life in a penitentiary?
She's beautiful. She's young. She has a wonderfully supportive family. Most of our murder defendants don't have any of those things going for them, much less all of those things. So what punishment do you give a defendant who looks like her, who claims she was abused? That was always going to be the obstacle and the issue in this case. The only way to counteract that is to make a jury understand, no matter how she looks, what happened in that bedroom that night was the opposite of anything you might ever think this beautiful woman could have done.
Kelly is already very well known within the district attorney's office. She definitely had a reputation with her country accent and her ability to relate to a jury and try tough cases.
Kelly Siegler versus Todd Ward and Neil Davis. The state versus Susan Wright was going to be the Harris County trial of the century.
Hopeful we'll have a jury who will be fair and impartial and will set their emotions aside.
Susan Lucille Wright stabbed and mutilated her husband, Jeffrey Wright, on January 13, 2003. Theirs was not a perfect marriage. The evidence will show you that, but whose is? Susan decided that she didn't want to get a divorce and that her better answer was to just eliminate Jeffrey. She also knew she was going to get a life insurance policy, $200,000. This case is not about self-defense. This case is about selfishness. She put all those wheels in motion way before that horrible night in January.
Die, bitch. Those were the words that Jeffrey Wright told Susan Wright the evening of January 13th, 2003, when he hovered over her in the bed with a knife.
Nobody deserved to suffer the fate that Jeff Wright did. But make no mistake, I think there was a side of Jeff Wright that he did not want others to see. That side existed.
For years before this incident, Jeffrey Wright kicked, pushed, and punched Susan Wright.
I think that marriages where abuse is systemic, women can't leave. Women don't leave. Susan Wright had 2 kids. She had nowhere to go.
They struggle, and she gets the knife, and she stabs Jeff. And she stabs him several times, but she's in such a panic, she thought her husband was still alive. She goes and she gets a necktie and ties his hand to the bed. And she continues stabbing him.
She believed that she had to use not just force, but deadly force to repel an attack from her husband that she believed meant the difference between life and death.
How do you claim self-defense when the person you're defending yourself against can't use his hands and he's laying on a bed tied up and he can't move? What are you defending yourself against exactly? I always believed that I had to drive home to a jury and not just tell them about what Susan did in that bedroom that night, but show them.
We had left the bed downstairs in the Special Crimes Division. We had the bed brought up, and the sheriff's investigators put it back together.
You got to make it come alive. You can't just sit in your chair and talk to the witness in the stand and just discuss it theoretically. You got to make it hit home to a jury. Hit them upside the head with it. That's what you have to do. And any prosecutor that doesn't do that is not doing their job. I wanted the jury to go, God, okay, she did that? And you want me to say Jeffrey was a jerk of a husband, therefore excuse her conduct?
You have Neil and you have Todd who are just looking at it like a freight train that they can't get off the tracks for. They had objected in advance, but that freight train was coming.
We want the bed of Susan and Jeffrey Wright admitted into evidence because we want to take that bed and show the jury exactly what that bed was that night in their house. It was a murder weapon, just like the knife.
The bed was assembled and it was showtime.
All rise for jury, please.
Kelly absolutely is known for the great level of empathy that she has for the victims of any violent crime. She had many meetings with Jeff Wright's family. She wasn't going to let them be surprised by how upsetting the evidence was about to become for them.
When you're a prosecutor, your job is to seek justice. Jeffrey Wright's family was a typical good family. What happened to them was horrible. Detective Reynolds, are these the pieces recovered from the scene on Berry Tree Road?
Yes, ma'am.
If I stand next to the defendant and we're both barefooted, do we appear to be the same height?
Very close.
Okay, thank you. Is Paul Doyle the same size and approximate height as Jeffrey Wright, 6'2", 220?
Yes, ma'am.
Paul Doyle was another prosecutor that I had luckily convinced Kelly had a much more similar stature and build to Jeff Wright than I did. I was definitely not going to be the guy that demonstrated in the bed.
Think I could take a knife away from him?
Objection, speculation, Your Honor.
The district attorney's office at that time, it was still fairly old-fashioned, and there was a rule in the employee handbook that any female prosecutor in trial had to wear a skirt or a dress.
So on that day, I had to get permission to wear a pantsuit, not a skirt. And I don't think I even told them because I need to straddle somebody. How about if you stand at that corner right there, right by Mr. Davis? The risk I was taking with the jury, trying to show them exactly how this went down, they could have thought I was being too theatrical. I didn't want to even have one juror kind of do this. Because it only takes one juror that you upset and you're toast. But I also hoped that by the time I argued to them, they would understand why I did it. And they would deliver the verdict that I thought was justice. Show the jury the way the left wrist was tied.
Kelly made sure that Mark Reynolds did a really good job of duplicating and setting up the scene to make it as close to the night of the murder.
I had examined the ligatures at the autopsy when they were cleaned up, and then later after they were removed.
What Susan did that night, she started out flirting, she stripped down, he stripped down or she helped him. She talked him and teased him into letting her tie up probably his feet first and then his hands. This wasn't the first time they did this. They'd done it before. And what tells me that is the candle wax. It was felt by his groin, by his penis, because she was teasing him with that too to set the scene. So if the defendant were to get up on top of Jeffrey Wright, something like this, and straddle him, and she's right-handed, and I attack at the head area first, which side of his face or most of the injury is going to be on?
On the left side.
During the bed demonstration, Susan is cognizant of the fact that people are watching her. So she is trying to act like this bed horrifies her.
It felt like she was making some mistakes with when she would cry and how she would cry. She wasn't coached very well, in my opinion. Where were most of the wounds concentrated on the body of Jeffrey Wright?
In the chest, the neck, and the chest.
Did you see anything consistent with a stab to the penis?
Not to the penis itself, no.
Because you saw what?
It was nicked. It was a superficial cut. It's more of a slicing.
Superficial slicings like this.
Right.
It was all Kelly. She became Susan Wright, and she got her message across very loud and very clear on how horrible the final moments of Jeff Wright actually were.
We're never going to have the time to go through 193 stab wounds. To me, in addition to the number, was the fact that there was some overkill, nicks and pricks. Susan stuck him in the eye and stuck him in the penis. How is that self-defense?
If he's like this, tied up, and she's on top of him, somehow she can stab him towards the center of his back or below that blade.
I think you'll be surprised at his mobility once you put that knife in his chest.
Neil Davis wanted to make a big deal out of the very few stab wounds that were toward the back of Jeffrey's body, and Mark Reynolds answered him and said, if you're twisting and turning and trying with all your might to get away from being tied up, she's going to slip a little, the knife is going to get bloody a little, it's not going to be a perfectly, completely all in the front fight.
What Kelly did, recreating her take on what happened, was genius. It was courtroom theater.
Everyone was riveted. We had not seen that level of drama and demonstration in a courtroom ever.
There are people out there to this day that think it was too much, it was too dramatic. I've heard the criticism, but I'll stick with what I believe. After putting on all those witnesses and doing the demonstration and it turning out as well as I hoped it would, we rested our case. And then it was time for us to hear once and for all what the defense was really going to say happened.
Your Honor, the defense would call Susan Ray.
If there was any moment that was going to outshine the bed demonstration, it was going to be Susan Wright's testimony.
When they called Susan Wright to the stand, my first thought was, great, because we have no idea what they're going to say. She's never been interviewed.
What type of things would set Jeff off?
If the light bills were more than what he thought they should be, if the house wasn't perfect, if dinner was bad.
Susan spends the entire first part of her testimony describing her relationship with Jeff.
He continually punched me in the chest and in the stomach until he wasn't angry anymore. He told me that he had a past problem with drugs, but that he had been in recovery for quite a while.
The defense spent a good amount of time building up how bad Jeffrey was, that he was a jerk, that he was mean, that he was insulting, and they should have. That was a smart strategy to try to use.
Jeff came home the 13th, Monday evening. And what did he want to do?
He had just gotten done with a boxing lesson and he wanted to box with Bradley. Jeff got his hands up and started making jabs at Bradley's head.
What did Jeff's eyes look like?
Red and glassy. He was very agitated, very excitable.
The fact that the autopsy showed that Jeff had cocaine in his system adds, at least incrementally, credence to Susan's story, because people who are high on cocaine sometimes not only act out, but appear to have strength beyond their normal parameters.
I walked up to him and I told him that I thought that he needed help with his anger and with drugs. He threw me to the ground. My head hit the ottoman and he was kicking me. And he said, "Die, bitch," and I opened up my eyes.
Did you see the same butcher knife you'd seen?
I swung in his hand and it was by his head and it was shining off the lights. And I got it from him. I got it and it was in my right hand. And I pushed him as hard as I could. I pushed him off of me.
To say that Jeffrey and Susan struggled over a knife makes no sense. Jeffrey outweighed Susan by exactly 100 pounds, and he was almost a foot taller than her.
I was afraid that if I left the room, that Jeff was going to get up and he was going to come after me. And then I tied up his right arm to the bed so that he couldn't get up.
She's trying to make the jury believe that she somehow is able to overpower him and get the knife, and she ties up his hands.
I started stabbing him again and I couldn't stop because I was so scared.
And the reason she is stabbing him because she is broken with reality.
You dragged him off the bed?
Yes, I did.
Did he hit anything?
He hit the nightstand and the candle went flying and it fell on Jeff.
So she said that the candle wax got knocked over when she went to put him on the dolly to take him outside to the hole. But come on, think about where the end table is. How in the hell is it going to get on his groin? Because she was teasing him with that to set the mood, to set the scene. Now, at what point in the middle of him being tightly tied up, it turned into rage and violence and murder? I don't know.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. The signal, please.
When that gate opens and Kelly has to make a decision, should I act like I'm sympathetic to what she has gone through, or should I be dismissive of it and blow it out of the water?
I started that cross-examination with the plan to be very calm and even-keeled and not get bitchy. But it was easy to get annoyed with her because she was lying.
By Saturday, you had gone to the doctor, gone to the cops, tried bleach, tried paint, tried to get rid of the carpet.
That was cleaning. I thought it was dirt and I had to make the house clean because Jeff was going to be mad.
That's right. In all the years of your marriage to Jeff, you always cleaned up the dirt and paint, didn't you?
No, but the house was dirty and I had to make the house perfect.
She decided to go hard at Susan, and there was certainly a risk in that.
When you stabbed him the 89th time or the 158th time, was your arm getting tired?
I was in such a state of shock and panic and sheer terror and fear that none of that ever occurred to me.
I remember when I was handling this case, my husband and I would talk about certain things, and in this case, the brutalness of 193 stab wounds. My daughter, who was about 10, she's the one who told me, "Mommy, didn't she get tired?" I thought, of course she had to have gotten tired.
That's a picture of his penis.
Unlike what you see on TV, in Texas, you're required to sit at counsel table as you question a witness. The only reason you get to let you approach a defendant or a witness is to point out something with evidence. And I approached Susan Wright because I had a picture. It was the one of the stab wounds close to Jeffrey's groin area, and I wanted to show her that. But she did that extra little, like, she was so, oh my God, overwhelmed with that picture. And that just pissed me off. Don't be acting so offended about what you did.
You didn't stab his penis. That's not a stab like this, like you're mad, like you're afraid, like you can't stop.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to ask the prosecutor to get back down in your seat, please, and refrain from doing this 2 feet from the witness.
I did not sit there and slice at him. I did not do that.
Yes, you did. Didn't
No,
you?
I did not. No.
I'm done judging.
Immediately after the cross-examination, we took a break, and a couple of people said, "Damn, girl, you went kind of hard at her." And I thought, ooh, I don't know if I want to hear that. So I wasn't 100% sure what the jury thought.
You have to determine if Susan Wright was in imminent fear and whether she acted in self-defense.
Because she looks like that, she thinks she can get away with fooling all 12 of you. She turned that bedroom into a torture chamber. She turned that bed into a butcher block. She is guilty of murder.
After a week and a half of testimony, the jury took 5 hours to come up with a verdict.
Stand. The jury find the defendant, Susan Lucille Wright, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment.
Obviously, I was happy with the answer. But once the jury found Susan Wright guilty of murder, the biggest, most important, most difficult part of the trial was still to come: her punishment.
In Texas, we have a very unique system. Texas lets juries and not judges assess punishment in non-death penalty cases.
The worries that I had going into the punishment phase were that they were going to buy into the marriage being a bad one, and they were going to cut her slack.
There is a real world where Susan Wright can get as little as 5 years probation for murder.
The whole game in this trial was making the jury understand she does not deserve probation or the minimum range of punishment or anywhere close to that for what she did to Jeffrey Wright.
We certainly had the very sympathetic testimony of Jeff's family.
Stab him in the eyeballs, but he's awake. I can't believe she did. She's evil.
Those were certainly emotional pulls for the jury to consider. Ultimately, the jury comes back pretty quickly.
Jeffrey's family asked why it wasn't a life without parole, but they're never going to be happy with the answer. How could they be? Their family had been broken forever. And the kids, they went to live with Jeffrey's brother and his wife to let them grow up without her being anywhere around them to further ruin their lives. The judge found that her trial lawyers in our trial didn't put on enough of a defense about battered wife. I remember thinking they didn't do it the way I thought they would do it. I can't argue with that. Does she deserve a whole new punishment hearing because of that strategic choice that they all made? I didn't think she did.
I was able to get Susan a new punishment hearing and shave, ultimately, 5 years off of her original 25-year sentence.
So what? The second jury pretty much saw it the exact same way. They all had to go through all that misery and pain all over again. So in the end, what was the point?
Susan Wright, the woman dubbed the Blue-Eyed Butcher. Guess what, folks? She's out of prison.
Released this morning at 9:30 from this facility, this women's facility right behind me.
In December of 2020, when Susan Wright was released from prison, the media went crazy. They were blowing up my phone. It was all over the news. They were hounding her. It was a really big story.
Please don't do this to my family. Please stop. Have a party, please.
If the courtroom is a theater of law, then this trial had its share of theater. Some would say more than its share. I say just enough. People don't want me to talk about what she was doing on top of that bed, on top of his body, because that's inflammatory and that's over the top and that's grandstanding. Give me a break. It was the right thing to do, because I guarantee you there is not one single person that was in that courtroom that walked away not knowing exactly what Susan Wright did. That night, she decided to murder Jeffrey. Susan Wright served her sentence. Her children and Jeffrey's family are still paying their sentence. They're still suffering because Jeffrey's gone forever. That's never going to change. We don't use the word closure. What the hell is closure? Closure means gaining peace. That's a bunch of bullshit. All we can try to get in the real world is justice. In 1995, a murder took place that rocked the heart of Friday Night Lights, Texas.
This is where the actual shooting occurred that finished the life of Adrian Jones.
The shocking murder of a popular high school athlete caught in the middle of a tangle of young love and obsession.
The intensity and the emotion was white hot.
Made for one of the most famous tabloid obsessive cases ever to come out of Texas.
This was the most unforgivable crime I've ever investigated.
She was really athletic. She was really nice.
We lost a member of our family. It's our school family.
It just breaks my heart.
This mysterious murder forever impacted all the people involved, from the investigators to the prosecutors who had to handle the case, and one of those was a friend of mine from back at the DA's office, Michelle Hartman.
To return a verdict of guilty to capital murder.
And even to the high-powered defense lawyers.
Might this make it just a little easier to overcome another person who was healthy?
Regardless of who you believe was responsible, it wrecked the lives of 3 different families.
On a cold wintry morning, December the 4th, 1995, a man named Gary Foster discovered something horrible off of Seaton Road and Joe Pool Lake.
It wasn't a direct route anywhere. It was a very little used side road from nowhere to nowhere.
Early that morning, he went down to his mailbox, and he had some property next to his house, an open field surrounded by a barbed wire fence. He looked over into his field, and he saw someone laying on the ground, feet tangled up in the barbed wire. He went over and saw that it was a young lady that was deceased. And he called the police.
Grand Prairie detectives Dennis Clay and Dennis Meyer arrived to the scene that morning and find what they believed to be a teenage girl lying face up in the dirt. She's got 2 bullet wounds, one to her cheek and one to her forehead. And she has a wound to the back of her head that might have been caused by a blow from a blunt object.
A crime scene can speak to you in many ways if you but listen. At the scene, crime scene recovers 2 shell casings, and because the bullets were found underneath her, that would tell us somebody stood over her and fired these shots into her face. So no, suicide was never a thought. She had some scrapes of barbed wire on her legs, and she had on shorts and just socks, like she was dressed to go to bed.
The victim was not wearing what you would expect her to be wearing on a cold, wintry night. Does that mean that she was possibly abducted from her home, or was she already with her murderer, meaning she could have possibly been with somebody she knew?
The victim's right hand had clutched the grass, because when a trauma of some sort occurs, cringing, it's physiological. There's no control over it. And so when the shot was fired, her body cringed in cadaveric spasm, and there's no faking that. That told us this is the primary crime scene, not a dump job.
Unfortunately, other than the bullets collected from her head and the 9mm casings, there wasn't a lot of other physical evidence found at the scene.
There's no identification on her, so detectives take a physical description, but we in Grand Prairie did not have a missing person that matched this physical description. So we sent a teletype to the other area police agencies, giving them the description of the body that had been found in our city limits. We got a call from the Mansfield Police Department. They had a missing person report for this 16-year-old whose mother had reported her missing that morning. The description of the body that had been found in Grand Prairie matched the description of the missing person, Adrian Jones. The family was taken to the medical examiner's office and shown pictures, and they positively identified Adrian Jones as the victim whose murder occurred in our city limits in Grand Prairie.
I can't even imagine what that would be like to be asked to go down to a morgue or a hospital and identify your child. I don't even want to think about it.
One of our students passed away yesterday. We lost one of the family.
The bad news comes through a loudspeaker today as students arrive early at school. The principal tells them that 16-year-old Adrian Jones was brutally murdered.
I met Adrian through Linda, her mom. Adrian at the time was a teenager. She actually babysat for my kids. And as soon as I found out, I went over to the Joneses' house, and I see Linda, her husband Bill is there. You know, she grabs me, we're just holding and hugging and crying, and I can't imagine losing a child to such violence. This girl, who I know had hopes and dreams, is just gone. Mansfield is a small town, all-American, you know your neighbors. I don't think anything like this had ever happened in this area at all.
Mansfield's a very close-knit Texas football town, really dedicated to its sports and school and church, and this struck to the heart of everything that people were fearful about their own kids.
It was just so hard to believe. Who would want to do this to her?
Adrian was a bright, well-liked, popular 16-year-old sophomore at Mansfield High School. Pretty, active in school. She runs on the cross-country team, widely liked throughout the school. She makes a great first impression on everybody she meets.
Adrian was a free spirit. She loves life. She loves her family. They seem to look out for each other. Even though Adrian's older, the only girl, I think the brothers Scott and Justin look out for her. I don't know of anybody that did not like Adrian. She's just very friendly. She's very easy to talk to.
She was definitely an innocent victim of a horrible crime for a reason to be determined. There's an oath that we take as a homicide investigator to let nothing deter us from finding the truth about who took the life of the loved one on behalf of the surviving members of that loved one's family. And as a detective, the 25 homicides that I was involved in, I solved every one of them. So the street cops gave me the name, Mr. Homicide, and I was determined to solve this one as well.
Linda told me that the night before, it was a pretty typical evening, but she did say that before she went to bed, Adrian was still awake and she was on the phone with somebody.
Her mother asked her who she was talking to, and she said she was talking to David from the track team. And her brother told us that around 2 o'clock, he heard her slip out of her bedroom window. Apparently, she routinely would go out in the middle of the night and talk to her friends.
Her brother, Justin, does remember hearing a car outside and a car door and maybe seeing Adrian getting into the car, and then he falls back asleep.
And that began for us the development of the person of interest, David Graham.
Adrian knows David through cross country. They run together, but also when they had to go out of town, they ride the bus together. So they were just acquaintances as far as anybody knew.
David Graham is a senior at Mansfield High School. He's an excellent student. He's actively involved in the ROTC. Everyone thinks of him as a real straight arrow.
When the investigators interviewed David Graham, he told them that on the night she disappeared, that he was studying with his girlfriend. The detectives asked David if he called Adrian late at night. He said he did not, and his girlfriend confirmed David's alibi.
In 1995, all phone calls were hardline to hardline, so there aren't going to be any telephone records that give you times and calls made. Because David Graham had an alibi, there was nothing else connecting him to the case, the investigation moved on to focus on other people.
The autopsy was performed by Dr. Mark Krause of the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office. In his autopsy report, there's no evidence of sexual assault. And the ballistics check on the shell casings and the bullets found at the crime scene identified a Russian Makarov 9mm as the weapon that caused the bullet wounds. Dr. Krause believed a claw hammer caused the blunt force trauma to the back of Adrian's head. Basically, a month and a half after Adrian's murder, the investigators had talked to every person of interest that had been brought to their attention during their criminal investigation. There was no other person or persons for them to pursue or continue investigating. Well, in February, the case goes cold.
Sometimes luck is what happens to break a case. And 8 months later, that lucky break comes from over 1,000 miles away.
The media coverage is as intense as I've ever seen. We had a made-for-TV movie and the book to contend with.
I fully believe that sometimes luck is what happens to break a case. We don't like to admit that, but it's true. And 8 months later, that lucky break comes from over 1,000 miles away.
In late August of 1996, the Naval Academy reached out to the Mansfield police. They had female cadets that were having a conversation in their dormitory about how much their boyfriends loved them and would do for them. And during that discussion, there was a cadet named Diane Zamora who says, "My boyfriend loved me so much, he killed for me." And she told them he killed a girl named Adrian in Grand Prairie, Texas. Basically fessed up to these girls trying to impress them with how much her boyfriend loved her more than their boyfriends loved them. And so those cadets took that information to the legal department at the Naval Academy. And they reached out to the Mansfield police because that's where Adrian went to school. Diane Zamora was 18 years old, and she was the alibi David Graham used when he was asked about having the phone call with Adrian. I was with Diane studying for our test. She had been talked to by the detectives, and she'd confirmed David's alibi.
David Graham and Diane Zamora were known in their respective communities to be the all-American kids.
Diane and David met in high school. Diane went to Forest Hill High School. David went to Mansfield High School. They got to talking to each other, and they fell in love. It had gotten very serious very quick. Diane felt like this was her one-time love of her life, the person you're going to give your virginity to. That's the way Diane was raised. After high school, David Graham is at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And Diane is at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. And they had plans to have careers in the Air Force and the Navy, and then to wed and be a couple for life.
David Graham and Diane Zamora's relationship wasn't just teenage love or puppy love. They were madly, obsessively in love with each other. Writing letters all the time, constantly communicating. They referred to themselves as Diane, who was the kitten, and David, who was the tiger.
The intensity and the emotion was white hot. David is as obsessed, in love, dependent, needful of Diane as any young man ever was of any young woman. I've never seen anything like it, frankly.
The naval authorities reached out to the Mansfield police, who reached out to the Grand Prix police, and detectives went out to Annapolis and interviewed Diane. And Diane basically said, oh, I just made all that up. I knew about the story about that girl from the high school being killed because I wanted to impress the other girls. And the Navy made the decision to send her home on a leave of absence pending their investigation and the criminal investigation. After the Naval Academy sent her back to Texas, she lands in Dallas and promptly takes a plane to Colorado. She went to the Air Force Academy and visited with David, and they discussed what she had said and the ramifications, and then she came back and went to her grandmother's house in Forest Hill, Texas.
You always want to ideally keep co-defendants or co-conspirators from talking to each other once you've identified them, because you don't want them to be able to get their story together. It messes up your investigation.
On September the 4th, detectives went to Colorado Springs to interview David at the Air Force Academy. He basically started out with the same denial that Diane had made all that up, and it was a dumb mistake on her part. But then the Air Force is now, he's an Air Force cadet. They have a little power over him, ordered him to take a polygraph, which he fails. The Air Force authorities tell him, you need to tell the police the truth about what happened.
Look who David Graham is. He's not some kid in public school who wants to smoke weed and detail his van. He's the Air Force Academy, the essence of regimentation. Sir, yes, sir. Sir, no, sir. David is going to do what the authority figures are basically telling him to do.
David, after being advised of his rights against self-incrimination, sat down and typed a 4-page statement giving all the details about how he and Diane killed Adrian Jones and why.
In his confession, David talks about on November 4th, a month before the murder, David and Adrian are at a track meet together. They're on the same team.
I was giving a friend a ride home late one night after returning from a cross-country meet in Lubbock, Texas. Adrian surprised me by asking me to take some turns that I knew were out of the way. After being directed onto a dark path behind an old elementary school, I parked the car. The events that followed are not pleasing for me to relate, as they go completely against the moral background I have grown to appreciate.
David tells Diane about Adrian and the fact that he has had a sexual relationship with her. And at that point, Diane just becomes out of control with jealousy and a need to make it right.
The only way he could make it right was to kill her.
The request of Adrian's life was, not for a second, taken lightly by me. I couldn't even believe she would ask that of me.
The person who had taken from her the one thing she wanted the most from him, his virginity. He was on the phone with Adrian, and he was telling her he needed to talk to her about something, and she agreed to come out of her bedroom through the window and get in the car with him to go out as a friend. And David promptly takes Adrian out to Joe Pool Lake in Grand Prairie. They had a set of weights in the back floorboard behind the passenger seat. Diane was in the trunk. Diane pushes the back seat down and crawls into the inside of the car. David begins trying to break Adrian's neck. Diane's in the back seat. She takes one of the weights and smashes Adrian in the back of the head.
Adrian somehow crawled through the window and, to our horror, ran off. I was panicky and just grabbed the Makarov 9mm to follow. To our relief, at the time, she was too injured from the head wounds to go far.
He got out of the car, walked over to where her body was. Diane told him, "Finish it." Stood over her and fired these 2 shots into her head. And they got back in the car, and Diane said, "We shouldn't have done that." And David said, "Nice time to tell me that."
When Diane told David that they shouldn't have done that and killed Adrian, David says, "Now you tell me." That just reemphasizes to me that this was always a stupid plan that never needed to happen. And Adrian Jones paid the ultimate price.
The detectives faxed that statement to the Grand Prairie Police Department, and the Air Force Academy held him in custody until extradition came and extradited David to Tarrant County. And the sergeant calls me and one of the other detectives initially involved in the case into his office, and he tells us we were going to get a warrant for Diane Zamora's arrest for capital murder. After she was booked, I took her into an interview room, and I said, "I have a statement that David made." I gave her one example from each page, some specific thing that he said happened, and I showed her his signature on the bottom of each page. So I said, "Would you like to go upstairs and give me a statement?" She said, "Yes, I would." In her statement, she talked about the virginity aspect and how that had torn her heart. I mean, she just had this mentality. Our virginity was supposed to be shared between each other.
I don't think I was thinking. In fact, I know I wasn't thinking. I screamed at him, "Kill her, kill her." All David wanted to do was make everything better. David promised to do that, and David has never broken a promise to me.
And he had so violated her lifelong thoughts about love and marriage that she decided that the only way he could make it right was to kill Adrian Jones. She talked about how she went and got in the trunk, and it was her mother's car, and the events around the actual attack were similar to David's statement.
He shot her twice in the head. He ran back and jumped into the car and drove off as quick as he could. I remember the first words out of his mouth were, "I love you, baby. Do you believe me now?"
The investigators were able to obtain a search warrant for David Graham's father's house. And in the attic of that house, they were able to recover a 9mm Makarov pistol and some weights that had blood on them. Blood that was a positive match to Adrian Jones.
We also found Diane Zamora's mother's car, and inside the door panel of the passenger side was Adrian Jones' blood.
Nearly a year after a Mansfield teenager was found shot to death near Joe Pool Lake in Grand Prairie, police say 2 military students have confessed to Adrian Jones's murder.
There's nothing more devastating than the loss of a child, no matter how it happens.
This didn't just shake people in Mansfield. What made this a national story was that this was a Navy and Air Force cadet.
The media coverage in this case is as intense as I've ever seen.
Before anything can be brought to trial, you already have a made-for-TV movie out.
She must suffer the consequences.
Whatever you say.
You have a book written about this case that probably have a whole lot of inaccuracies. It could potentially make your case harder to prosecute. David Graham and Diane Zamora were both being held in custody, but on separate floors at the Tarrant County Jail. Although they both basically confessed and admitted their involvement to law enforcement for what happened to Adrian Jones, you wouldn't know that by the way they were interacting with each other in the Tarrant County Jail.
After they've been arrested and they're in jail awaiting trial, they start writing each other letters. They send each other letters with doodles in the margins and heart shapes, and they're still living in this teenage emotional bubble.
It was a hard summer for the both of us, and I can't help but cry because it was all in vain.
About the trials, what we talk about should stay out of letters for obvious reasons.
The academy was your dream, and I crushed it, and I want to just kill myself over it.
I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse, but I'm told my case will be easier to defend than yours.
Maybe I'll just die in my sleep, and you can pin everything on me and go free.
On top of the national sensation this case already presented, Judge Joe Drago, in one of the first times ever, let court TV cameras in to film the whole trial. Back then, all the old school judges didn't believe in cameras in the courtroom. And I remember thinking the first time they filmed one of my trials, how many little things people could learn and see for real as far as how things really work in the courtroom.
Linda Jones, Adrian's mother, tried to be very honest and open, reminded everyone to always remember Adrian and always put Adrian first.
She's with us every day for the rest of our life in joy and happiness. And we're going to remember that joy and happiness always as a family.
But it wasn't the massive media attention that was the biggest issue in this case. When you have this romantic relationship, male-female, you have to worry that is somebody going to feel sorry for her that the boy was a brute and talked her into doing it? Or is somebody going to maybe feel sorry for him that this conniving, cunning woman talked him into doing it? And you always have to worry about that happening because it only takes one juror to buy into that story for it to be a problem with your case.
Diane's trial begins February 2nd, 1998. She's the first one to go to trial, and she's facing a charge of capital murder.
Because in Texas, capital murder is murder committed during the commission of what we say happened to be one of the enumerated or underlying felonies. In this case, aggravated kidnapping.
They unlawfully encouraged her to come out of her house. So that was basically a kidnapping. And kidnapping in the course of murder is called capital murder.
From the beginning, Diane presents a very put-together image. She's always just meticulously dressed and fairly stoic, unemotional in the courtroom all day in front of the jury.
Even if Diane Zamora's defense strategy would be, I didn't really mean for this to happen. David Graham is the big, strong guy with the temper. He's the one that pulled the trigger. If she's in the car, what is she doing in the car? Is she still telling him to do it? Is she running away? Is she saying stop? Those are all the little pieces of the evidence that the prosecution has to make sure they make clear to the jury.
At the conclusion, the picture will be graphically clear, and each one of you will feel compelled by the law and by the evidence to return a verdict of guilty to capital murder against Diane Michelle Zamora.
I knew Michelle Hartman because she was my secretary when I was in County Court 7. She didn't even tell us back then she was thinking about going to law school. But to sit second chair with Mike Parrish on this big a case was a huge next big step for her.
Diane's defense team focused on pushing all of the blame on David. Their goal is to present David as this domineering person in every aspect of Diane's life. To her attorneys, David did everything and pretty much made her come along.
You people will know what happened on that night, and you will have reasonable doubt.
One of the things that the defense in Diane Zamora's trial was really fighting against was having the judge allow into evidence Diane Zamora's written statement.
In my testimony in Diane Zamora's trial, the defense attorney tried to accuse me of doing all kinds of improper things, tried to prove that I, some way or another, read every word of David Graham's statement to Diane Zamora. No, I did not.
Did you coerce her in any way to give that statement?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you make her any promises that would induce her to give that statement?
No, sir, I did not. When you know that the answers that come out of your mouth are truthful, there's no anxiety. And the judge ruled that her statement was admissible as evidence.
The best way for the prosecution to clearly show her involvement in the planning and execution of the murder, the strategy would be to bring in as many witnesses as you could possibly find who can talk about what Diane said to them to show Diane Zamora's state of mind and the planning that went into this. The prosecution's first witness was a high school friend of Diane Zamora's, a girl named Christina Mason.
She said, this is a girl they had sex with. They had planned her murder.
You couldn't have found better witnesses that lived in the world of David Graham and Diane Zamora.
Well, at first she said that she had totally cleared her conscience and that the girl deserved it. Everyone knew that the girl was a tramp and a slut and that she deserved to die.
Diane said Adrian deserved to die because she had taken something of hers that she knew belonged to someone else.
On top of this witness testimony, the prosecutors were able to bring into the courtroom the murder weapons, the 9mm Makarov, the barbell weights with Adrian Jones' blood on them. And then after the prosecution rested their case, the defense made what I thought was a bold and shocking move by calling their client, Diane Zamora, to the stand.
When Diane takes the stand, it's really the dramatic Perry Mason moment that people expect.
If you're really guilty, you don't take the stand. That's the way trials usually work, because they don't want you to break down. They don't want you to crumble.
The burden of proof in all criminal cases is on the state. It's on the prosecutors to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. For that reason, most defense lawyers understand that, and they don't have to put on any evidence. A lot of cases end with the defense just saying, the defense rests. I think to put a defendant on the stand in a murder case is a huge risk.
She's taken through a very controlled examination by her lawyer.
Were you obsessed with David Graham?
Yes, sir.
Were you also afraid of David Graham?
Yes, sir.
Did you also love David Graham?
Yes, sir.
The best way for the defense to take advantage of Diane Zamora testifying is to have her, as much as she can, play the victim. That she was manipulated by David Graham, that none of this was her idea, and that he overpowered her and controlled her, and that wasn't the case, but they did try to play it that way.
Did you hit her with a weight?
No, sir.
Did you hit her with any kind of blunt object whatsoever?
No, sir. It looked like she'd run into something. I figured it was a fence.
It gets pretty emotional. There are several times when she does cry on the stand.
When the crook of his arm came down, I heard a gunshot go off immediately.
You heard a gunshot?
He told me she was dead.
And did you believe him?
No.
Did you believe that David had killed her?
No.
The emotions seem pretty sincere.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that anyone thought she was making it up.
Tell the jury what he said, please.
He said, look what you made me do.
The defense ends up with some evidence pointing to their relationship and the role David may have played. There's some letters suggesting that he has some control over Diane.
He tried shoving it between my legs, and he put it in my mouth. He was trying to pretend he was raping me. I told him to please stop.
The defense paint a picture of David as an abusive boyfriend.
Most defense lawyers don't get the beauty of having a defendant like a Diane Zamora that looks so perfect. Maybe they relied on that a little too much and put Diane Zamora on the stand. This gives the prosecution a chance to cross-examine Diane Zamora and unravel whatever carefully practiced and orchestrated story she had planned to give that jury.
She's asked difficult and pointed questions by the prosecutors.
Did you tell Jennifer McKinney that Adrian Jones was a slut?
No, sir. I believe she misinterpreted a lot of what I said, but she's not a liar. Christina Mason is a liar, though.
She kind of becomes a little more negative. You could sense that perhaps she's getting angry.
I want you to find the portion in David Graham's statement when you have Adrian in the car where David Graham says you told him to kill Adrian, out there at the car at the murder scene.
I told you his statement is very general, so it wasn't in there. But I also said my statement was not true.
Did you tell Jay Guild that you would kill Adrian Jones again if you could?
No, because I didn't kill her.
You can practice and prep a defendant all day long, but when they get up there under the pressure, if a prosecutor goes at them the right way, they're always going to break some. And I think that you can't hide what you are. The prosecution did a wonderful job of cross-examining her, breaking apart her story, making her look a whole lot more cold and mean than I bet the defense ever wanted her to look like.
Justice matters. Truth matters. Adrian matters.
Diane Zamora, on December 4th of 1995, was judge, she was jury, and she was the executioner.
After closing arguments, the jury was sent back to begin deliberating. They deliberated all afternoon, and just when people were starting to wonder if it was going to be a protracted deliberation, they come back and return a unanimous verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant Diane Michelle Zamora guilty of the offense of capital murder as alleged in the indictment.
The district attorney was going to seek the death penalty in Diane Zamora's trial. Linda Jones went to the district attorney and said, I don't want parents to have to deal with what I've dealt with. I don't want the death penalty to be asked for.
It's difficult to lose a child, but to see other children die is pointless.
What the Jones family did was an act of true grace.
Basically, when she was found guilty, it was just capital life, which was 40 years from the day you were arrested.
With the conviction of Diane Zamora, the prosecutors don't really get to rest on their laurels because they know that they have coming down the road 5 months from then, the trial of David Graham. David Graham hired Dan Cogdell. Personally, I know him very well, and I can tell you he is one of the best lawyers I have ever seen in the courtroom. And I've referred people to him as the best lawyer that they could possibly ever want to hire.
I had just defended Clive Doyle in the Branch Davidian case, and David's mother, I think, read about that result and called me to assist her son in his charges.
I can tell you that Michelle and Mike better be ready for Dan Cogdell because he's going to think of things to throw at them that they did not have to deal with in their first trial.
You don't have to be around those two kids for more than about 60 seconds to figure out who's the controlling alpha in that relationship. There's no question Diane Zamora is more responsible. This murder would have never happened but for Diane Zamora, period, full stop. Diane's trial affected David's trial in a couple of different ways. First, it increased the attention and the publicity that David's trial already had, which he needed like a hole in the head. Second, by the fact that she was found guilty, it's in the public's forefront that if one defendant is guilty, another defendant is guilty.
The benefit that David Graham's lawyers have, Dan Cogdell and his team, is that they now have a playbook that they can look at to see what the prosecutors are going to do, the order they put on witnesses, the specific questions they ask of all the witnesses, like a cheat sheet that they can use to see what's coming at them when they get ready to go to trial.
You lied to your mother about what you knew, right?
Yes.
You lied to your principal about what you knew.
Yes.
You lied to the police about what you knew.
Yes.
Dan Cogdell does what he does best. He starts poking holes at the witnesses' stories.
Did Diane Zamora ever suggest to you that she was hiding in the trunk and came out and surprised Adrian Jones or anything along those lines?
No, sir.
He starts picking on the way the crime scene was processed, all the things that you would fully expect him to do.
It was important to put it in as sterile of a container as possible.
Yes, sir.
And instead of doing that, y'all put it in a cigarette container.
Yes, sir.
And then Dan Cogdell brings in a brand new witness who throws a landmine in the state's theory of the case. After Diane Zamora's guilty verdict and as David Graham's trial began, the one thing that up until then everybody thought they understood was the motive for why this murder happened. That is, until this new witness came forward, turning the whole case upside down.
The belief was all along that David had indeed had a sexual relationship with Adrian Jones coming home from the track meet in Lubbock. And so it was out in the news about what the motive was. After Diane Zamora's trial, a friend of theirs named Wendy came forward.
You drove Adrian Jones home from the Mansfield High School parking lot following the Lubbock track meet.
Yes, sir.
David Graham could not and did not drive her home that night.
No.
In Diane's trial, the state's theory was that David had to participate in the murder of Adrian Jones because David had told Diane that he had had a sexual relationship with Adrian. Wendy's testimony showed that David never had a physical relationship with Adrian. Therefore, the state's theory that that was the reason that he agreed with Diane to kill Adrian, I think it should cause a reasonable doubt with the jury.
But I think this strategy really hamstrung the defense. That David would lie about whether he was intimate with Adrian merely gives the prosecutors the opportunity to say if he'll lie about this thing, he's lying about everything.
So what do you have in this case? David Graham's written admissions corroborated by physical evidence found in his father's attic, including the murder weapon itself. You have weights that have Adrian Jones' blood on them. You have corroboration from everything Diane Zamora said. So whether or not he made up this story to Diane about his involvement with Adrian Jones, it makes the murder more stupid, but it doesn't lessen his culpability at all.
You know that she was the sacrifice on the altar of David Graham's ego, his cowardice, and his utter lack of humanity.
On July the 24th, after 10 hours of deliberations, the jury convicts 20-year-old David Graham of capital murder.
When it was all over, I felt badly for Linda. By this time, she was exhausted. I think we all felt bad for these families and for these kids and the lost future.
I remember her eyes with joy. You will with fear.
I have no hate for you. I can't hate an animal, for they are ignorant, dumb, and blind. It ruined so many lives, so many families. And unlike my brother, I can hate an animal, and I hate David Graham.
He's your prisoner, Sheriff.
David Graham and Diane Zamora are both still sitting in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Since they were 20 when they were convicted, when they are 60 years old is when they will first be eligible for parole.
"104 homicides I worked and or supervised in 18 years, 1 month, and 15 days in major crimes. The murder of Adrian Jessica Jones is the most gruesome and unnecessary, unforgivable crime that I had anything to deal with in my career. You put me in front of a parole board, a man that can maintain his composure is probably not going to maintain his composure in that moment. Because this young lady who would be 43 years old now is not here, doesn't have any children, doesn't have a husband. I apologize.
The thing that makes me the craziest about this case, it was just so senseless. 3 teenagers who had their whole lives in front of them, and look what happened. 2 are rotting in...
Ben! Why did you do that, Ben? Ben, why did you do that? Please hurry up.
We got him coming.
Kelly, I know
notice that this case isn't our typical cold case. It's only about 3 years old.
It's kind of nice for a change, huh?
Yeah.
For the first time, we actually had the elected prosecutor ask us to help with the case to see if we could bring in some new eyes. On January the 26th, 2012, 24-year-old Ben Cooper was found by his wife, Samantha Price, lying on their bedroom floor with a gun beside him and a fatal gunshot wound to his head. Even though it was an apparent suicide, the police suspected foul play.
So Ben Cooper and Samantha Price, they were only married 2.5 weeks before his death.
And we know that Ben had a lot of psychological issues. Ben was an easygoing, sweet boy, but it's kind of sad because the same sensitive nature that drew people to him also made him vulnerable to the darker emotions he often felt.
Even when it seems obvious as a suicide, you always treat it like a murder. And then you let the facts lead you to
confirm or rebut.
Right. There's only one witness, Samantha Price, and she said the victim killed himself. He has access to a gun, then why would she not be telling the truth? If it ends up being that her story is plausible, maybe we can get this cloud off of her head.
True, and as far as why they got married and what possibly could have gone so wrong, 2.5 weeks later, we have no idea. We got to try and figure it out.
It has been 16 years and still no answer.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
There are so many cold cases out there just waiting to be solved.
The crime scene ultimately tells the story of the murder.
We want to bring justice to these victims.
Hello, how are you?
How are y'all?
John Ward, prosecutor.
Nice to meet you.
Orlando.
Jeremy Doherty.
I'm excited that a prosecutor wants some help.
In a small county, we don't have a lot of resources. So when I reached out for a purpose.
Well, show us where you want us to work, and we'll get started.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Being invited by the prosecutor himself is like being invited by my own people. If he wants us to do something, that's what we're going to do.
Thank you again.
And I'm excited about it, and I hope that we can make some progress. If this happens at the beginning of 2012, y'all never have really quit working on this case then? You never put it to the side?
No, it sat on the top of my desk, and I looked at it and tried to figure out what more things that we can do. This, from the beginning, has been the most important case that I've ever had to investigate. So it's always been front and center for the past 3 years.
How old was Ben when this happened, Jeremy?
He was 24 years old.
A baby. Everybody said he was sweet, though, and...
Yeah, that's right. Everybody said that he was very intelligent. He loved children. He thought of himself as like a guardian to his nieces and nephews.
He moved in with Samantha about 6 months before all this. Samantha Price was the 29-year-old mother of a 5-year-old little boy. They met in the fall around October of 2011, and they ended up getting married in January 2012. And when they got married, it seems like things kind of went downhill pretty quickly. Can you start out by telling us what happened that night?
It was January 26, 2012. At approximately 11 p.m. that evening, Samantha Price had called 911 to report that her husband, Ben, had shot himself. The fire department arrived on scene. They saw Benjamin Cooper laying face up in the doorway of his bedroom with a single gunshot wound to the head. Then ended up dying en route to the hospital.
So what all do we know happened that night based on what Samantha told y'all?
Well, Samantha told us is that night they'd been drinking. They had had an argument because Ben wanted to go to sleep and he wanted Samantha allegedly to come to sleep with him, but she wanted to stay up and play on the computer and listen to music.
He gets into an argument with me, it escalates, and he says, well, I don't even want to be here.
After the argument, Ben left. Samantha says she calls Ken, which is Ben's dad, to have Ken come get Ben. And at some point, Ben comes back and it reportedly breaks the glass on the back kitchen door.
When he kicked the back door in, I was actually really scared then. So I went back into my bedroom and locked the bathroom door.
He said Samantha claims that she was in the master bath when she heard what she describes as a balloon popping. She opens the door and allegedly sees Ben laying on his back with his hands down by his side, the gun still in his left hand.
Okay.
And everybody there is thinking this just doesn't add up. I mean, the way that Ben was shot, he was shot in the lower center base of his skull. And I've worked a lot of suicides and nobody's ever shot themselves in the back of the head, in my experience.
Right.
And so obviously that was the first red flag, was where he was shot.
I haven't worked many questionable suicide cases, but I know it's not common to see self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the back of the head. It doesn't necessarily make this a murder, but it's a big reason the police have always had doubts about Samantha's story. All right, guys, we're going to start off with, is this a suicide? Set the mood for that night, according to Samantha. They're fighting.
She says that they've both been drinking.
Consistency, she tells Dad, she tells 911, she tells the cops.
Samantha consistently says suicide. And also, from hearing him on the 911 tape, Dad seemed to be going along with it.
911, do you have an emergency? Yes, my son's shot himself, and the ambulance is supposed to be en route.
It seems like he believed it, too.
And the dad confirmed that he had been diagnosed with mental illness.
He'd been hospitalized for it before?
Yes.
Considering Ben's history of mental instability and past hospitalizations for depression, there's a very real possibility that he took his own life. So understanding his mindset at the time will be crucial to this case.
You know, that's a lot of points that we're going to need to address under suicide. Now we need to focus on our only suspect, Samantha Price. What's your number one reason why you don't think this is a suicide, Jeremy?
And the entrance wound is in the back of his head, and the lie she made about the gun. She said that she never seen the gun before. She didn't know where Ben got it.
Where did the gun come from? I'm not sure.
When does she start to change to, it is my gun, and it was in my panty drawer?
Yeah, that was after we brought her back down to the Grafton Police Department.
Okay, what was my gun? My dad gave it to me.
And then she changes to,
trying to cover for Ben because he's got mental issues and she didn't think he's supposed to have a gun.
I was seriously afraid that you guys would think it was Ben's gun. He is not supposed to be allowed to own a gun if he's ever been committed.
when I saw the interview, she's sitting there and lamenting and crying and all that, and I couldn't tell if she knew that she's being filmed.
Oh my God.
So I'm watching her going, okay, it seems pretty genuine, but where's the camera? How obvious is it?
I'd have to double check on that.
This case is tricky. There are only two people that know what happened that night, and one of them isn't alive to tell his side of the story. Either Samantha is innocent and we need to allow her time to mourn and move on with her life, or she's a killer and we need to do everything that we can to put her behind bars and get justice for Ben.
We're going to go meet Marcia and Kenneth Cooper. They're Ben's parents.
And they're not together anymore?
No, they're not together anymore. They do keep in contact with me quite frequently.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Hi. Nice to meet you,
sir. Nice to meet you.
Well, we just wanted to come and check in with you.
Okay.
What are your best memories of your son?
Easy kid, easy baby. He was always happy.
Did he ever talk about what he wanted to do when he got older?
He came home one day and he said, I know what I'm going to do, Dad. I want to be a forest ranger, which I thought he would be great at. You know, it was more than just a father-son type experience. To me, Ben was my best buddy.
That night where Samantha calls you, what are you thinking about everything?
Samantha called me and told me that they had had a fight, and I said, give him the phone and let me talk to him. There won't be any problem. She ultimately did just hand him the phone, and he was fine.
She handed him the phone?
Mm-hmm. First thing he said is, I think I really screwed up, Dad. It was the first thing he said.
When Ben says to you, I think I really screwed up, Dad, you think he's talking about
the fight that they had and him walking out.
breaking the door.
And then breaking the door. And I said, well, anything can be fixed, you know. I said, I got plastic, I got tape. That's what I was planning on doing, patching up the door and getting him out of there.
Okay.
And I was at the red light. She calls me. She says, Ben just pulled a gun from somewhere and shot himself. And I said, what do you mean he just pulled a gun from somewhere and shot himself? You know, because I couldn't believe what she said. When I got to Ben, he was laying close to the doorway of the bedroom with his hands above his head. And he was lying there, still breathing, but in gasps.
Have you not heard all this before? I'm sorry.
Everybody says, I know what you feel like, but unless you've lost a child, there's an emptiness that is just like someone yanked out a part of your heart and there's a big hole and nothing fills it up.
I know it's difficult.
We wouldn't put you through this unless we thought there was potential.
I understand that, and
Okay.
I'm grateful that you
I
all came.
appreciate it.
Give me a hug.
Oh,
Hang in there, okay?
oh, thank you.
To lose your child is something that I can't even imagine how you stand. I don't really know how you live the rest of your life with all that spinning around in your head. This will be your case you remember your whole career.
Oh, yeah.
Hey! Good to see you. You remember him too?
Yes, I do. Oh my gosh, I've seen you
Forever.
I know.
This is Jeremy.
Jeremy, I'm Yolanda. Nice
Good
to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Have we had one younger, Yolanda?
No, he's pretty young, okay? I'm here in Taylor County, West Virginia, to help determine if the 2012 shooting death of Ben Cooper was a suicide or a homicide at the hands of his wife, Samantha Price.
You ready to talk to Mr. Nodell and Courtney?
Yeah.
The ballistic experts?
Yes.
When determining whether a gunshot wound is self-inflicted, it is important to understand the location, orientation, and trajectory of the wound. So at the request of prosecuting attorney John Board, we've brought in two ballistics experts, Matt Nodell and Max Courtney.
What does the firearm tell us to start with?
The firearm is called a Rec P8 LA Fury 25 semi-automatic pistol. I've mocked in a line to represent the approximate direction of the bullet entering in the center of the back of the head, traveling upward and leftward to the left temple region.
What do you mean by hard contact?
Hard contact is a situation when the firearm is pressed directly against the wound.
So it's your belief that the gun was pressed against the head?
Yes. And sometimes the perimeter of the gun can cause a small wound or injury. And if this wound is in fact associated with the front part of the gun itself, the firearm would be leveled left and right. So, can you achieve this orientation with a non-suicide? Of course, it would be Price, the only other adult there. So we modeled a shooter who would represent Price and how she could achieve this process. So certainly she can deliver this shot.
It's easy to see how Samantha may have approached Ben from behind and pulled the trigger. But what's really important is to find out if it's physically possible for Ben to have fired that fatal shot himself. If it's not, that's all the evidence we need to say this was a homicide.
Explain to me the process of him shooting himself, because she's saying that the gun was in his left hand.
He was laying on the floor on, I believe, on his left side, which he is left-handed.
Can he do it with his left hand? If we hold the gun in a traditional manner, I would say it's essentially impossible. But there is a way, if you put your thumb in the trigger and then bring it over the top of your head, now I can achieve that same path that we know has to occur. But he would have to then achieve a fairly exotic situation. The easiest way for this to occur is for somebody to deliver that shot to the back of his head. That's the easiest way. But I have to consider all the other options as well. So I don't really lean strong one way or the other.
As Matthew pointed out, you've got a very complex case here.
If it is a suicide, can you take the replica gun and show us how you think that works? Are you pulling the trigger with your thumb?
Yes.
Yes. So y'all are both in agreement that the only way he commits suicide left-handed is using his thumb to pull the trigger.
Unless he's more limber than I am.
And the only way is upside down and...
It's just so complicated, and it doesn't make sense. And you might miss.
Because I might want to miss. You're going to do a trick shot?
There are things that push me this way and push me this way. If you can find additional information, maybe there is something that would convince me that it's either a homicide or a suicide.
Ballistics evidence alone can't rule out the possibility that Ben committed suicide. And even though it's not a conventional way to shoot yourself, the fact that it's possible could create reasonable doubt.
Put yourself on the journey. We have a physical possibility.
I don't think it's impossible for him to go like that.
It's clear that we're going to need more evidence to figure out once and for all who pulled that trigger. Hey, girl, we'll see you after a while at the crime scene.
Okay.
Yolanda's going to meet us later at the crime scene. But first, it's important for us to learn all that we can about Ben's state of mind and the state of his marriage at the time of his death.
Thank you.
So we're going to go talk to members of the Nelson family who were very close friends of Ben.
So we understand that Ben saw you like his mom.
Yeah, he was like my son I never had.
That's what we heard. We heard you guys really close.
Yeah, I really love that kid.
Did he ever talk to you about his mental state?
Ben kind of had a low self-esteem because he used to be a fat kid, and in his mind he was always still that fat kid. He never thought that he was worthy and that he would never have a girlfriend and a wife. And when he met Samantha, he brought her over to introduce her to me. And I really just didn't like her because she was just so overbearing. She wouldn't even let him finish his own sentences. And within 15 minutes, I looked at him and I said, "Scrape him off, Ben. Scrape him off."
What does that mean, scrape him off?
Just be done with him. Just run.
Do you want to run to Kim's house since we're right here?
Okay. Oh, so she's close to where her mom lives.
Yeah.
Hi, Kim. Nice to meet you. Orlando Martinez.
Kim Nelson was the one who first introduced Ben to Samantha.
Tell me a little bit about Ben.
He was a loner, and he was so desperate for affection or any kind of attention, he didn't care who he got it from, because all the girls he would go after were batshit crazy. And my mom always said, "Don't stick your crazy. Just don't." And he did it every time.
Would you say that he was a depressed person?
Very much. Very, very much. He tried killing himself several times. Over a lot of breakups, he would get drunk, pop pills, and just see if it killed him.
Why do you think he was trying?
Because he was that lonely. He was that depressed, and he thought he would never find anyone that would love him. He wanted a family.
We knew Ben had thought about suicide, but we weren't sure if he'd actually attempted it before. It makes you wonder if something happened that night that threatened the family life that he so desperately wanted that caused him to follow his suicidal pattern. Only this time, he succeeded.
We've learned from Ben's close friends, the Nelsons, that he had a history of suicide attempts and depression, which may have led to him taking his own life 3 years ago. Kayla Nelson is the youngest of the three Nelson sisters and lived with Ben for a period of time before he met Samantha.
Heard you and Ben were close. Wondering if you could tell me how you met?
We met when I was like 12. He was my sister's best friend in high school. And then he stayed with me for quite a few months when I lived on my parents' property. And he left, and 3 months after that, we found out he was married, and then he died.
When it started being said that Ben committed suicide, what did your family say?
Well, none of us thought it was suicide. I mean, he was the one who always told me that suicide was a coward's way out, so he wouldn't do it.
Ben said that to you?
Yeah.
What other little things have you thought of through the years?
And he's left-handed, by the way, just so you guys know. He's really shitty with a gun. I mean, he lived with us at camp, so we had to kind of show him how to defend himself because there was coyotes and all that stuff. Just to hear that he'd shoot himself with a gun is actually kind of frightening because he didn't even really want to shoot the gun.
That's very helpful, Kayla. Thank you.
Yeah.
We were pretty stupid to not think about the idea that if Ben lived out on the land with Kayla, there would have been weapons around and she would be the best person to talk about his familiarity with weapons and how he shot them. And what she has to say is so very, very important.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Kelly.
Ben's grandmother, Judith, was close to Ben and he visited her often. Is there anything that you can say as far as you don't think that Ben committed suicide? I mean, can you give us some reasons why?
His world was starting to open up. He had problems up until then, and most of it was because he couldn't get a good job, and he didn't have the money, and he didn't have a car. But he got that application for that glass factory, and it was just like it was the beginning. He was happy. He'd walk down those stairs with the biggest smile on his face that I'd never seen on him before.
After talking to all these witnesses in Ben's life, we're getting mixed responses about his mental state. But that's the challenge you have in investigating potential suicide cases. The only person who really knew what was going on in Ben's head was Ben. How are y'all? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Kelly. Ben's sister, Shannon Cooper, was as close to Ben as anyone and may be the one person that he confided in the most. Their father, Ken, has offered to bring her into the prosecuting attorney, John Board's office to meet with us.
Did your brother ever mention anything about his relationship with Samantha?
He caught her on the computer talking to another guy. They got into a fight about that.
Did he ever come up to you and say, hey, sis, I really got a problem with her?
Like December, I get a phone call from my brother, and he was like, can you come get me? And he said, oh, well, Samantha's yelling at me, and he told me that she called him a piece of shit. I can hear her yelling in the background. But who the hell are you on the phone with? You need to get off the effing phone. So he hung up. Phone rings again. It was her that called me this time. I said, if you hurt my brother's feelings, you're going to have to answer to me. And she was like, well, go ahead. I'll tell you where I live. I got guns at my house. She's like, I'll just fucking kill you.
Samantha threatening to kill Shannon isn't just evidence of her temper and aggressive behavior. It also shows how, in a fit of rage, the first thing that came to her mind was a gun. Tell John about your phone conversation with your son.
I said, I'm coming out. He said, okay, I'm going to get my stuff. I'll be ready when you get here.
Ben cared about my dad more than anyone else ever. He wouldn't have told you. He wouldn't have told you to come get him. For you to see him like that, he would not have done that. He cared about you too much to do that, because if Ben would have done something like that to himself, he would have made sure you didn't know about it.
It's pretty clear that Ben and his dad were very close. So why in the world would Ben let his dad walk in the room and see him lying there like that, shooting himself in the back of the head? It doesn't make any sense.
We're actually doing a mock crime scene today.
Yeah, we're borrowing this building because Samantha still lives in the same trailer where this happened, so we couldn't really get in there.
So we're going to go out there where we're going to see if we can try to visualize this a little bit more, what really happened that day.
Right around this corner.
After you.
Hey, guys.
Hello. Yeah, this is the general layout.
Yeah, nice job. We're meeting our ballistics experts to try to gain a clearer picture of the events that night.
Right here is about where Ben's body was found laying. His head was about right where I'm standing. His feet down toward this way. Large pool of blood around where Ben's head was laying. There's a smaller pool of blood down here. Then there's a little bit of blood on the side of the bed sheet over there.
Let's set up the scenario for a minute. There's obviously some disaster happening in this house that night, okay? You got two people fighting. It's bad. It's a bad, bad fight. He leaves, but then, for whatever reason, does come back. Let's say he does break that window. We all know they're not on their honeymoon tonight. This is going downhill fast between the two of them. We know that tempers were flaring between Ben and Samantha that night, but it's unknown what actually motivated the shooting. So whether or not Ben's death was a suicide hinges largely on how plausible Samantha's story is. We've only been married, 2 weeks and 1 day? And this is a disaster.
We're at our mock crime scene trying to figure out if Ben Cooper might have shot himself back in 2012 like his wife Samantha claimed, or if she shot him.
Let's stick to what we know happened in this case.
Samantha's initial story to the police was that after arguing with Ben, she went into the bathroom and shut the door. Then after hearing what sounded like a balloon pop, she opened up the door and found Ben lying on the floor.
So she hears pop, comes out, sees a situation here, and she cradles his hand and for the first time realizes blood. And then she's got to call 911. And at some point, she talks about picking up his arms on this smooth floor. I can get him about that far.
We just don't know why she moved him or what was the point.
She says the dogs.
Yeah.
Right. That's all we know.
So I grabbed his arms. I got him up above him and grabbed his arms and pulled a little bit. I'm like, come on, Ben. Come on.
But how does doing this to that keep the dogs away?
The fact that Samantha moved Ben's body is odd, but not necessarily suspicious. It does, however, raise the question if there's anything else that doesn't make sense about the rest of her story.
If we're going to troubleshoot her story, she's in the bathroom and unavailable.
The bathroom opened up into the bathroom that direction. There's piles and piles of clothing all jammed up against the doorway here, so you wouldn't have been able to pull the doorway shut.
Okay, so right there, that's the crux of her story, that she's in the bathroom with the door shut. If the clothes on the floor prevented Samantha from even shutting the bathroom door, it's possible she wasn't even in the bathroom at the time of Ben's shooting. But did she pull the trigger? John, since you're the one that's going to have to make the hard decision on this, why don't you commit suicide with the left-hand scenario and let Matt walk you through it, because you're the one that's going to have to do this.
So, yeah, you're very close. That's approximately it.
And then down a little bit more,
you
so
can,
like this.
Right, or you can bend, if you can bend your head forward a little more, that will achieve the same situation.
That contorted description he just gave, what's simpler, that or this?
Certainly, the explanation is simpler.
We know that she keeps her gun in her penny drawer. Ben's in the room. She gets her gun out of her penny drawer and comes up behind him. It doesn't take that long. It's not that complicated.
Why wouldn't you just take this gun if I'm going to kill myself and bam, I'm done, or under my chin or in my mouth? Why am I going to be flipping this thing backwards, upside down, any which way I can and do this? That doesn't make sense to me.
And all of this is in a vacuum, not considering the fact that they've been married for 2 weeks and a day. Their world is falling apart. Daddy's on the way to get him. He says, come on, Dad, I'll pack my bag. All those things that are going on in their life, we're just ignoring, trying to make something physical, logistical work that doesn't work. I think we've been playing devil's advocate long enough. It may be possible to shoot yourself in the back of the head by twisting your arm like a pretzel, but come on, use your common sense. In light of all of your years working crime scenes and as a firearms expert, what is your opinion as to what happened in the bedroom that night?
It could go either way. If you want to know from a scientific perspective if this is unusual, it is.
Is that consistent with the suicide?
No, I've never seen a suicide delivered in this manner. I've never seen it.
And neither has Max, she's
I agree.
So I think we all agree it's much more likely that it's a homicide.
Yeah.
Very true. You good?
Good.
After walking through the possible events of that evening, it seems more and more likely that Ben's death was not a suicide. Y'all ready to roll? And the only other person who could have pulled that trigger is our suspect, Samantha Price. But we're going to need more to prove that. We need to delve deeper into Samantha's world.
You can sit right here in front.
We've tracked down Taylor Smedley, Samantha's younger stepsister, to see what she can tell us about Samantha's mindset.
What can you tell me about your stepsister, Samantha?
You know, I love my stepsister, but she has always been a very angry person. Just know she's always had a personality where she will get revenge on someone. She's not the type of person to just let things go. What I can tell you that I know for sure is one time me and her were smoking in her bathroom, and I noticed there was a very large gap between the door and the door frame. It locks, but the gap between the door is big enough to where it won't stay shut.
So the handle locks, but it still swings open.
Right.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
You're welcome.
All right.
We'd like to learn more about how Samantha acted in past relationships. We were hoping to talk to Jeff, Samantha's ex-boyfriend.
That should be the next one.
Jeff wasn't comfortable giving a recorded statement, but his parents were willing to talk.
Hello. Hi, I'm Orlando Martinez. Nice to meet you.
I'm Kelly. Nice to meet you.
Can you tell us about Samantha's demeanor? Did her and Jeff fight a lot?
She called all the shots. He's very quiet. She has a very bad temper.
Always has?
Ever since I've known her.
What do you think's wrong with her?
I think she's just spoiled.
Hey, Mark. Don't forget to tell him about the time she stabbed me in the belly with a butter knife.
I'm Jeremy Doherty. Like I said, I'm the corporal working the case. I'd like to know more about what caused her to stab you.
Well, they was at my house. It was a holiday. I don't know what day it was. And I walked through the dining room. I just reached over and touched her. And man, she took a butter knife, stabbed me right across the belly. There's no doubt in my mind that she done what happened. There's no doubt in my mind.
You mean that she actually killed Ben, that he didn't commit
Yes,
suicide?
I honestly believe that. And the only thing I told Barbara, I'm glad you went and got Jeffrey when you did, or that could have been my son.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.
Do me a favor.
I'll try.
Put her where she belongs.
It might be this street down here on our left.
We've learned that Samantha Price, our suspect in the 2012 shooting death of her husband, Ben Cooper, had a history of anger and violence dating back to her relationship with Jeff.
How you doing?
Sleeping.
Sleeping. You wanna get a shirt on? Can I talk to you for a few minutes?
Yeah, can you give me a minute?
Yeah.
John Haight is a friend of Jeff's, and he's never been questioned by the police.
How long have you known Samantha?
I met her through Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff and I were in college together after Ben had passed. She came over to the house, and then she starts telling us her side of the story.
Exactly what did she tell y'all happened that night in the trailer?
That he became distraught.
Ben became distraught.
They were arguing, and he said, "Fine, then I'll just kill myself." And he ran into the bedroom and got the gun and shot himself.
Right in front of her.
Did she say where she was at?
She didn't really explain it like that. Like, she didn't say, I was here, he was there.
Yeah, but she insinuated that she saw it.
We now have a witness that heard right out of the mouth of Samantha that she saw Ben shoot himself. This contradicts her initial story.
I locked myself in the bathroom. I should have just stayed out there. I should have called the cops when he kicked the door.
This is the other thing, too, is that years ago, we went over to Jeff and Sam for dinner one night. And her and Jeff weren't getting along, and they were fighting. And she's like, I'm leaving Jeff, and I'm going to get custody of my kids, and he's going to pay for it all. And if he ever tries anything, I got a gun, and it's unregistered, unlicensed, and nobody knows where I got it. I can make it look like a suicide. And them stupid cops, they'll never know what I'm doing. And I was like, well, you told me, and now I know about it. And she's like, Jeff is never going to get that kid, and that if he tries to take him away, I'll shoot my kid and myself.
She said that too?
Oh, yeah. She's like, there's no way in hell he's ever going to get this kid. She thinks she's so smart. She thinks she's smarter than anybody that she's ever met, and that she can manipulate them into doing whatever she wants.
Samantha described to John how she could kill someone and get away with it, just like how we believe Ben died.
Oh, my Lord.
He's good.
He's fantastic.
So we're going straight to Samantha's.
How far does she live?
We've passed it a couple times.
Oh, that's right. That's right, down
she's
that
just-
side road.
She's just 10 minutes up the road from Grafton. You think it's as important just to catch her up in more lies as it is to necessarily get a confession?
She's never going to tell you she did it. Samantha Price is what I call a yapper or a talker. She can't shut up to save her life. And if we can get her to talk today like she has in the past, she might just give us a little bit more and all we need to solidify this case. She thinks y'all are all so stupid anyway, you know, just play up to her. Good luck, boys.
Hello. Need to talk to you for a couple minutes. We're still just doing some follow-up. I'm trying to get this Benjamin Cooper death investigation off my table.
I think I've pretty much answered every question that I've been asked. And, you know, it was a very traumatic thing for me to go through. And I just don't want to, I don't want anything to do with it.
When we talked to you 3.5 years ago, you know, obviously there was things that couldn't be answered that night. And as far as evidence-wise.
Possibly couldn't have been answered. You guys are smart. I mean, the night to me was all a blur. All I know is that I came out of the bathroom, my husband was laying on the floor, and I tried to get him up, and he wasn't getting up.
Okay, I understand that it's traumatic, and that's why we have to ask the questions, because we weren't there. And
Well, you should have a recording of every question that was asked. I mean, I think I should probably have an attorney. If you guys want to ask me more questions.
well, if you change your mind, you have his number, okay?
Yeah, all right.
Thank you very much.
Samantha asked to speak to a lawyer, so that shuts down this interview. But without knowing it, she might have just slipped up.
She did say listen to the tape, so she realized it was being recorded.
Yeah?
Since watching her initial interview, I've been wondering if Samantha knew she was being recorded.
I didn't know. I did not know he would do this.
And if her outpouring of emotion was just a big show for the camera. And now she might have just given us the answer.
Oh my God. Oh, baby.
We've talked to all the witnesses, examined the physical evidence, and now it's time to decide once and for all if the death of Ben Cooper was a suicide or a murder. Guys, you know why you can say this is not a suicide? Because number one, an entry wound to the back of the head, none of y'all have ever heard of.
Even though it may be minutely, hypothetically possible, it's not very likely at all.
Besides the entry wound, the trajectory itself from here to here.
The trajectory being so difficult to pull off.
He wasn't a gun person. Found a witness that can say that.
Just so you guys know, he's really shitty with a gun.
His dad was on his way to pick up his son. Do you really think that Ben was going to let his dad, the man he loved more than anybody in the whole wide world, find him with his brains played behind his head?
If Ben would have done something like that to himself, he would have made sure you didn't know about it.
You know, after all we've been able to address this week, this is not a suicide.
I think we can write the possibility of suicide off.
And then you prove that it is a murder case because of all these lies that Samantha Price has always told. She's lying about the gun.
Where did the gun come from?
I'm not sure. Okay, well, it was my gun. My dad gave it to me.
She's lying about the bathroom door.
Put my butt against the door near the door hinge in case he did try to kick the door in.
You wouldn't have been able to shut the door with the mound of dirty clothes piled up high against the doorway.
This is the woman who's talking about how she's going to do it one day, and we have a witness who now says it, Mr. Haight.
I got a gun, and it's unregistered, and she's like, I can make it look like a suicide.
And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
We feel like we have a solid case against Samantha Price for the murder of Ben Cooper. But ultimately, it's prosecuting attorney John Board's decision. He's reviewed the case, and hopefully he agrees. Well, John, what are your thoughts about this case?
It's just amazing how much work you all have done in such a short amount of time.
There were things that came out in this that we had looked at, but we hadn't looked at it with that fresh eye.
It makes a world of difference.
What are your thoughts as far as what happens next with this case?
Once we get everything together, we'll have an answer in 4 weeks. There's no doubt in my mind. She will be indicted for first-degree murder. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. John Board is excited about the case, and he plans to take it to a grand jury. He's confident that there will be justice for Ben Cooper and his family. But Jeremy, you ready to go tell Ben's mom and dad everything?
Let's go. Benjamin's parents, they've waited over 3 years for an answer regarding the death of their son. And so it's nice that things are progressing. Good to see you again.
See you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's been a long day and a long week.
It has.
We talked to a lot of people. We found some new witnesses. Based on all that we've done, in our opinion, there's no way anyone could say this is a suicide.
I couldn't picture any way it was possible.
Yeah.
Well, you would be happy to know that John Board is taking the case to a grand jury for an indictment against Samantha Price. Good. You would love to hear how many people talk about how they felt about your son. And I think that's something you need to know in your heart.
Yeah. When we had his memorial service, there were 300 people there.
You don't realize how many lives one person can touch until something like that happens.
You know, I really wish he realized that because he didn't really.
That he didn't know how much everybody loved him. We heard that too.
Yeah.
Let's give him a hug.
Thank you.
I can tell you that if Ben is able to know what's happening, he's forever
Amen.